Okay, everyone, this is my spoiler review of X-Men the Animated Series Season 3, Episode 19, Love in Vain. This originally came out February 10th, 1996, so it was actually originally aired in Season 4. Before I jump into this review, hit that sub button. This is a brand new X-Men channel. I can use all the support I can get, and if you're watching on TikTok, follow along here. It means so much, and it will help me grow as a channel. Now, we open with Rogue, who's a central part of this episode, and she's looking out of the window at Cyclops and Jean embracing. So you know where this is going, you know what this is setting up, and she's like, y'all have no idea what you got there, what I give. So it's always a great story with Rogue when they go into this challenge she has where she can't actually affectionately touch someone without hurting them. So then it cuts to this giant space whale called an Akanti. Now seeing this in hindsight, you see where Dave Filoni must have got his inspiration from the space whales we see in Clone Wars and Ahsoka. But this space whale crashes into a desert where Logan just happens to be, I guess, meditating on a rock. Now we see the colony comes out, the insectoids to attack him, which are based off the Brood from the comics. I love when they have him pinned down at one point. One of them is facing his six-pack and he's like, go ahead, pal, take a good look. And I love the animation of these insectoids, that they have these Doc Ock-like tentacles and they zap Wolverine. So then it cuts back to Rogue, and now Gambit comes to see her, and he asks what a beautiful girl like her is doing alone on a Saturday night. And she says she's reading about love and adventure in a book, I kid you not, titled Romance Novel. And when Gambit's making his move, this is when Cody calls, the boy Rogue put in a coma. So this got me excited. They're going all the way back to this tragic incident that happened for Rogue with this boy Cody that she first kissed. So I did not think they'd actually go all the way back to that. So it's cool to see that brought in here. And we see when she meets Cody, he calls her Possum, and he's like, you never gave me a chance. You left before I got out of the hospital, and Rogue's crying through this. So it's a very serious episode of this show, and you feel for Rogue here. So then Cody basically is like, let's go to this dark alleyway and stand right here and let this insectoid zap you. He's like, we're gonna be together like it was always meant to be. And they kiss, and Cody is fine, but then Rogue faints. Now we go back to Wolverine, who wakes up in this space whale, and he's like, I hoped it was a nightmare. Just little lines like this with him are so good. And he realizes the whale is alive, and he says, tough setup, pal. Bet it wasn't your idea to be a roach motel. Just the great zingers Wolverine has in this episode. Now we meet the queen of this colony, and her plan is to eventually turn all of the X-Men into these insectoids. And I love that Cody tells Rogue he wants to do a weekend getaway with her. Oh, but it happens to be in a desert at a space whale. And Gambit has the line of the episode, because when Wolverine calls Professor X and he's like, roaches, help, Gambit says, Wolverine don't normally make sense, but this makes less sense than usual. I died at that line, especially in the background of Wolverine just saying all these random things. Now Rogue's just trying to get time off here. She wants the weekend off to spend with Cody. Professor X is being a tough boss, or he's like, we gotta help Wolverine, and she's like, you got plenty to babysit Logan. But it's funny because then the X-Men go to help Logan, and they all end up together anyway, because then Rogue finds out that this is the weekend getaway from hell, that she's been brought to the desert at this space whale. And I love when she's like, why are we here? Cody's like, they said they wouldn't hurt anyone. I love Cody was so trusting of these insectoids. I would love to have seen what that conversation was like. So now the body horror kicks in this episode. A lot of it reminded me of The Fly, and Logan becomes an insect, Cody becomes an insect, and then Rogue becomes an insect, and this is where Storm is just pleading for Professor X to help them. But what I especially loved about this episode was a great use of Wolverine's healing power, which they underutilize in every story with Wolverine, I feel like, and it's just not shown enough, and it's cool it was shown here a lot, and how he's able to recover from being turned even to an insectoid, and later on when he lets Rogue absorb his healing power. And it's a creepy episode. I mean, especially when the queen is holding Rogue like a baby and telling her how their operations work and how they want to keep their race going and that they can't have children. Very just scary visually, and also just what they're talking about. Now Rogue feels guilt about Cody even being involved with all of this, and she's like, if it weren't for me, you would be home safe and sound. And it's really tragic when Cody says, I love you, Rogue, we can finally be together as they're both bugs. And it gets even more sad when this happens, where Logan has Rogue absorb his healing power, and Cody's like, don't do it, we could still be together like we dreamed as kids. And she's like, I'm sorry, Cody. Now I want to talk about that in a second, how depressing the end of this episode is. But before we get to that, you see Storm is calling for X as they try to escape, and Professor X has a great moment where he actually realizes the colony enslaved the Akanti, the space whale, and taps into its mind. And I love the Akanti's noise kicks in, and it's the kryptonite for these insectoids, and Rogue hears it as a beautiful sound, which I thought was great too. And where it gets depressing is when Rogue is pleading for Cody to come, and he's like, I'm sure the professor can help you. And he just hisses back, and Gambit's like, leave him, he's one of them now. I was like, what? Like, that is such a sad ending, that he is now in that whale, he is a bug, and he was really doing this just to be with Rogue because he loved her. He was trying to find a way that they could actually be together, and he ends up now an insectoid on a whale. I thought that was so sad. I think it was the most depressing ending of the show so far. Like, I was shocked it even ended that way. Like, not even like where he just went with them and then even maybe show it ever again, but that we would assume, yeah, he'd get help from Professor X and be a human again. But no, he's in that space whale. He's an insectoid. I was like, okay, like that's a sad ending. It was like the first episode left me with just like, I was down from the episode. I was like, okay, like put me in a little bit of a sad space. So it doesn't take points away though. I just thought it was shocking they went that way. But I'm going to give this episode an 8.6. I actually really enjoyed it. I love the focus they gave on Rogue's story here with the problem she's always had with trying to have an intimate relationship with her powers. And I love Wolverine in this episode had great lines, but also seeing how his healing powers work, and Gambit with that great line I mentioned as well. And a cool, clever ending and resolution with Professor X figuring out what was going on with that space whale. Very good episode. Not amazing, but I do think it's one of the more solid episodes of the show, and it's a good way to end season 3 now in this new order of the episode. So I think it's a nice little finale to get you ready for season 4, which I can't wait to review. So make sure to hit that sub button so you don't miss any of my reviews of season 4. We're almost done here. I'm doing this whole show, so I'm really excited. We're at the home stretch here, and I'll see you next time.